So I'm Bob Sandheinrich. I'm development manager here at Wolfram. Every sort of modern programming environment tends to have a package manager, and there hasn't been like an officially sanctioned or like really continuously maintained and developed one for Wolfram Language until now. All right, so how do you make a Paclet? So hopefully some of you have done this already, but I'm not going to assume so. There's kind of two ways to get started from scratch. Say you don't have a Paclet at all, maybe you just have some code in a notebook or in a package file and you want to get started. There's kind of two ways to really get going, programmatically or with a definition notebook, and that's really where I'm going to focus here today. So to start programmatically, you load the Paclet tools, Paclet. You know, this is a very good, eating our own dog food here. Everything, it's Paclets all the way down. You can create a new empty directory, create a Paclet in there. And now when I look in that empty directory, there's a couple of directories, a couple of files. There's a documentation directory, there's a kernel directory, and there's a Paclet info file. And there's a package file, computationalbeer.wl, which comes preloaded with this say hello function, right? So just a trivial function, but this is sort of showing declare a symbol here, define it here. And that's if your Paclet is just going to be one package file, you want to put it all in there, you kind of just paste your code from your notebook or whatever, and you're off and running, right? So that's sort of how you do it programmatically. And then we also have this definition notebook. So I can just say create notebook, Paclet resource. It also in 13.2 is file new repository item somewhere in there. And this is going to say, where do you want your Paclet to go? I'm going to come in here. I have this guy. I have computational beer and computational soft drinks. I'm going to computational wine. How about? So this is a new empty directory. And this is basically, and now there's this intermediate step with these fields in it. So you can see that, you know, there's some pure metadata fields that ask me about the version of the Paclet, what version it's compatible with. I'm going to say it works in 13.0 plus. I can put in a short description like tools for modern, still can't type. All right, venology, because that's a fancy word. We like fancy words. And you'll notice that the name has that Bob /. So Bob is not just my name, it's also my publisher ID. The names start with the publisher ID and then /. So that's the name that it's going to create. So I push this, and then this is doing the same thing that the create Paclet function did a moment ago. And we get this definition notebook. Let's see if I can zoom this here. All right. So we have this definition notebook, and it has this, you know, sort of file browser here, which shows, you know, the same things that we saw when I was printing out the file names before. There's a kernel directory, a documentation directory, there's a Paclet info file. This also has a license file. So, I mean, what the main difference here with where you're using the definition notebook is it kind of is assuming and targeting you towards publishing in the public Paclet repository. So, you know, we want those Paclets to have licensing information. We want them to have the publisher ID inserted all over the place. So it kind of starts you off. And then it has this notebook itself, the one we're looking at right now, is also saving that directory. You know, if I look at the Paclet info file, it's basically the same thing we were seeing before. There's a couple other lines in there that it pre-filled out for you. Some package file still has that say hello. So that's sort of how you can get started. We're going to come back to the definition notebook in just a moment, but I don't want to use that one. I want to talk about converting an existing Paclet. So if you're not starting from scratch, say you have a Paclet that, you know, you've had for years, months, whatever, and it kind of works, but you want to submit it to the Paclet repository, but you're like, oh, publisher ID, that's a major inconvenience. Well, we've tried to make it as convenient as possible. So just do that, create notebook of Paclet resource again. You're going to get this, choose where it is, but then instead of creating a new directory, let you choose one that's already created. So if you remember, when I was doing it programmatically with Paclet tools, I made this computational beer one. So that is an existing Paclet that was made just, you know, normally, doesn't have any publisher ID. I choose that, and it says, hold on, Bob, you're missing a publisher ID. And it gives me these choices. I can either just keep going as it is, I can convert it in place, modifying my existing files, or I highly recommend saying convert a copy. That way, you still have your old copy in case you want to do anything with that, and you'll get a new one. So I make sure that this is my publisher ID. If you don't have a publisher ID, there's a convenient little link here to go to a web form where you can create one. They're free. Everybody can get one. So there we go. So now you can ignore this dialog. That's just because I was rehearsing this talk with the same name earlier. So now my publisher ID is in here. My publisher ID is in the Paclet info file. Put it in there. If I look at the package file, the context has my publisher ID in it. Let me magnify this a bit. Right, so it's gone in all the places where it thinks I'm going to need to have a publisher ID and put it in there. Now, we're not guaranteeing this is 100%. You're not going to do anything. If you have some, if you're like building symbol names with 2 expressions, stuff, there's no way it's going to find that and put context in there. So there might be a few places where you still have to change things. Here, let me magnify this as well. But yeah, so now I'm going to take this Paclet and kind of fill out the definition notebook as if I was going to publish it in the Paclet repository. First thing I'm going to do is add a real piece of code instead of that hello world or say hello, whatever it is. All right, so this is a function called beer ABV. Declared up there. All right, so that's a little bit better than say hello. All right, now let me go back to my definition notebook and start filling it out. So the first section is titled web content. So this is information that'll appear on like the home page of your Paclet when it's published. So this is the first thing you see, kind of want to have it a little flashy, a little neat, try to get some attention. The headline, and this information actually is not included in the Paclet itself that like gets delivered and people download and install. This is purely for the web. So let's try to find an image. Wikimedia is good for public domain stuff. Let's see, this one's public domain. They don't look too happy about it, but I'm going to put them in my Paclet anyway. They don't get a choice. All right. Oh, let me go back to my definition notebook. All right, so I can just paste an image here. Boom. All right. So there's those people. All right, and then there's a description. Again, this appears on the website, so maybe give some context or background, like beer is as old as civilization. More recently, computation has made it better. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm making bold claims. Yeah, and then you could say, this Paclet contains code for blah, 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 blah. Details, so this is really like a prosaic thing, like type out a couple paragraphs that people are going to read, and then the details is a bulleted list. So it can be, it does A, B, C, D, and E. I don't have this to type in, and I don't have unlimited time. So then the next thing here is main guide page. So this makes me start thinking about documentation. And I'm going to sort of change gears and write a little documentation. But first, I'm going to make sure my Paclet is loaded. So there's these 2 convenient cells. These pink cells in here mean and you can see, if you can read the tiny words, it says excluded. Those are basically cells that are in the notebook for the developer's use and will be excluded from the published version. So, that's just sort of a handy tool to help you do things. So if you'll notice, when I first created this Paclet, it popped up this palette here for documentation. So this is sort of all the tools for writing documentation. So I'm going to make a new function page for my only function, beer ABV OG for original gravity, FG. I don't brew beer. I just learned this last week. Computes an approximate alcohol content based on the original and final gravities. And then fix all the typos. That's always part of my process. I don't know if it's part of your process. And then your best friend when you're writing documentation is this template input button. Use it liberally. I'm going to say just format. So that kind of gives these the little italics look to them. And it'll be tagged so that as documentation is built and whatnot, everything will have the right formatting. I can add a note like here, like the approximation accurate for most common beers. Again, I have typos. Okay. Right. And then you want to add some examples. So beer ABV, and since I loaded this with needs, it's on the context path, 1.06, 1.02, add a little caption here, compute the ABV of a, I don't know, Oktoberfest, we'll say. And always end with a colon. Let's make one more plot. Got to have a plot. All right, and then always have a caption. Create a plot of alcohol content as final gravity changes. All right, so now we have a function page. We'll save it. Next, we're going to make a guide page. So guide pages are very important for helping people find things. If your Paclet gets large, they typically list all the other symbols and they kind of organize them in intelligent ways. So you can imagine if I really built this out, I might have like drinking functions and brewing functions, or like, distribution functions, not for like computer science distribution, beer distribution. All right, so I only have one function here now, so I'll put it here. Give it a one-line description like compute the ABV of a beer. Give it the whole guide page description like functions to help brew. And I only have one, so I'll delete the rest for now. I'll save this. All right, so now I have a guide page, so I can proceed in my definition notebook. I'll click here, I'll pick my one guide page, I'll stick it in there. All right, and then we have the examples in the definition notebook. So, we have all these doc pages, and they should have like full comprehensive examples, so show every feature in the documentation. But this in the definition notebook and on the home page of the website should be very shallow, right? So this should be just the highlights, really show people as quickly and briefly like what your Paclet's about. So I'll just add one example here. All right. Oh, that's a strong beer. Of an IPA. How about? All right. I'll delete the rest to save some time. All right. So that's the examples. And now we have this source and additional information. So this is metadata about your Paclet. And it's important if you're going to publish in the Paclet repository. It's important to fill this out. You got to fill this out. So I'll put my name here. We highly encourage people to commit their source code to a public Git repository like GitHub. That if you want to do collaborative development, the idea is that happens on something like GitHub, and then you just do releases that get published in the Paclet repository, right? The Paclet repository itself is not this sort of collaborative development environment. It's just a publication, a release mechanism. So if I got to this point where I wanted to release it, I'd make sure to commit my source directory as a GitHub repo and link it here. And then anybody who visits it on the Paclet repo will see a link back to GitHub, and it'll all work out. I should choose a license. MIT license is good. If you're curious about these, all these links take you to more information about them. Keywords, these are like search terms. So beer, brewing, ale, lager, just put in hops and barley, whatever, anything you want. Be be liberal with those. Categories, we have this drop-down menu where you can sort things. Obviously, beer is social and medicinal, so I will choose those. Related resource objects. Let's see, a good way to do that is to go to resources.wolframcloud.com and just search something like alcohol. You can see I did that earlier. So this is a good one. Let's grab this name. We'll put it into the definition notebook here. And if you have good cross-linking, people will find your work, including web crawlers for search engines. So cross-links are good for SEO. So I encourage you to find relevant ones and put them in there. You can link to external websites. So I probably should have kept track where I found that approximation that I used in my function and link it here. That'd be good. Wolfram language version, I'm going to say 13.0. If this only runs on Mac or doesn't run in cloud or those sort of things, I can fill them out here, and it will use that Paclet Manager capability so that only environments where the Paclet is supported will it end up. These are the disclosures. So you got to fill these out. If somebody reports that your Paclet does these things and you didn't fill it out, we might take it down temporarily and contact you until you fix it, sort of thing. But this is only doing multiplication, so it's none of these. Author notes. So this is sort of, you can use this for anything you want. This is sort of your free area. I could say like release notes could be put in here for incremental versions. You could say, more functions to come when I'm sober. And leave the typos in that one. All right. So now I think I've kind of filled it out. So the next step is where things get interesting. So we use this check button. So this check button goes in and inspects all sorts of things. It looks at this notebook itself. It looks at the Paclet info file. It looks at the code in the kernel directory. It looks at the documentation notebooks in the documentation directory. It looks at all these things and has all sorts of rules and inspections and tries to tell you where you definitely or maybe or might have made mistakes you want to fix, and it marks up your notebook. So you can see I had 4 warnings and 3 suggestions. So I just completely forgot a description here. So that's an easy one. Tools for brewing and consuming beer. I think it's my O key. That's really been the problem. All right, and some of these will have autofix functions. So this is saying, it's probably small, I don't think it magnifies well, but new submission should be version 1.0.0 in the Paclet repository. I say, okay, that sounds good. So there's an autofix version. So I click that, it opens up my Paclet info file, it changes it and says, does this change look good? I say, yep, and it saves it for me. All right, here's another one about the Paclet info file. It wants me to declare my symbols in there, which is a good idea. I don't really want to get into why, but if you have questions about that later, we can talk all about it. It says the aspect ratio of this image isn't good. I'm not going to fix that right now. So I'm going to say, don't show again for this cell. Ignore it. I like my image. Let's see, what else does it say? The creator is missing from the Paclet info file. So you see, a lot of these things would have been in here if I had started from the definition notebook at the beginning, but I started with the conversion. So now it's trying to synchronize the things that were missing. So really, there's many fields that it wants to keep in sync between the Paclet info file and the definition notebook. And it has these, autofix functions to do a lot of them. Again, the license, let's see, is that everything? Oh, one more. All right, 13.0, right? So it saw that there was a mismatch and it helps me fix it. All right, so let's do this again, see if I have a clean bill of health. Oh, it's found one suggestion. Okay, so right, I didn't have the description, I filled it in, but it still isn't synced with the Paclet info file. So now it's good. All right, let me do it one more time. This is why I'm going to run over. I thought I would get by with 2. It's taking me 3. Now we're running over. All right. All right, so clean bill of health. So the next step is to build the Paclet. So I'm going to say build all, and this takes all of your source code and your source documentation and your Paclet info file and anything else you have in there, and creates a Paclet archive from it. So it actually creates the deliverable that will be distributed to users through the Paclet repository or through the cloud or whatever. You get this .Paclet file. You can just take this guy and do whatever you want with it. You can, you can put this on GitHub. You can put it in your cloud account and send the URL around. You can email it to your colleagues. This is it, all you need. But we can also trust us to help you with distribution. So if I thought this Paclet was any good at all, I would hit submit to repository, and it would start a process where in about 10 minutes, probably the Paclet is live on the public Wolfram Language Paclet repository. But this is a crummy Paclet, so I'm not going to do that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, don't wait until your Paclet is everything you ever thought it could be to publishing. There's versioning. Once it's decent, go for it, and then you can always make it great later. But this isn't even decent. So I'm just going to deploy it to my cloud account, where only people with my live streamed URL here will know how bad my Paclet is. So this is going to take my Paclet and put it in my cloud account, and it's also going to create the website that's a lot like the one in the public Paclet repository if I was publishing it there. It'll have a home page with all this web content. It'll have documentation pages. It'll have click to copy that anybody can use to grab the code and run with it. It takes a minute. We'll see. While that's happening, let's go back here to my slide. Oh, there we go. All right, so here's my cloud deployed Paclet, and you can see this Bob's here. That means it's in my cloud account. So there's no global search where you're going to be able to find, anybody's going to find this. If I want people to know about it, I got to tell them about it. But all the documentation is here, just like it would be in the public Paclet repository. And I can take one of these click to copy guys. I can go back here. Let's just make a new notebook. I can put it in here, and it should work right away, right? I already had this Paclet, so it's kind of cheating. But this, you'll have to trust me that would work for any of you. It'll have to do the download. So instead of taking no time, it'll take a second or two. All right, so let's go back to the slideshow real briefly. So that, I got through the main thing I wanted to show you. It's how to do the definition notebook. But what's the difference between a Paclet that you're using for yourself and one that you're going to put in the Wolfram Language Paclet repository? The main requirement is that publisher ID and all the namespaces, right? We can't have everybody just choosing their names in some sort of gold rush scenario. There's already a Paclet called Selfies that has nothing to do with taking pictures of yourself. It's a chemistry thing. So yeah, we need these publisher IDs to make the world sane. And then there's other conventions that if you want to be featured on the homepage at any point, you're going to have to follow, like documenting all your symbols well. And let's see. So that's lots of places to learn. We have all sorts of documentation. 2 new pages came out that are basically walking you through the steps that I went through. This share a Paclet workflow. This is exactly what I did in this talk. And it's in this workflow documentation where it's very step-by-step flow charty. I encourage you to check those out.